In this week's news from Dorchester, we have some disturbing indicators about the coronavirus, a fear of contagion from a pot shop, and a flood warning for Morrissey Boulevard. To bring us up to date is the managing editor and publisher of the Dorchester Reporter, Bill Forry. Thank you very much for being with us, Bill.
Thanks, Chris. Good to see you.
Bill, it's good to see you again, too. I know maybe you're a bit busier than you were before, but I want to talk about the coronavirus with you because a lot of times, because we're natives of Dorchester, we like to say we're number one, but this time it's not such a great thing to say about the coronavirus.
Yeah, unfortunately, the numbers continue to tick up, Chris, in terms of the rate of positivity. The metric that we're all watching, of course, is that relatively small percentage of cases that come back COVID positive. The citywide positivity rate has gone above 4%, which was a real concern that the city administration, the Walsh administration, has said that they were watching as kind of a tipping point towards, unfortunately going the wrong direction. And that obviously has been on the increase over recent weeks. 4.4% is where it stands as of this week, according to the latest statistics citywide. However, Dorchester is above that. All of Dorchester has now gone above the citywide average. And in fact, two of our zip codes here, 02121 and 02125, are actually the highest positivity rate in the city at 9.7%. The rest of Dorchester, 02122 and 02124, is at an average now of 6.3%. I should mention Mattapan is also around 8%. So our side of the city, whereas it was East Boston that had been really leading the pack, unfortunately for our friends at Eastie, for most of this crisis, those numbers have now shifted to this side of the city. And part of that has to do with testing, Chris, and the level of testing going on here. The city is urging everybody, whether or not you have symptoms, to get tested. There are more places to get tested, like Bowden Street Health Center, where I got tested last week. They have a turnaround time of about 24 hours. It's a very easy system. And I didn't have symptoms, but I felt it was important to follow that guidance from the City Hall. So myself, many of my colleagues have been tested recently, and it is fairly simple, easy to do, not a long wait. And as people are doing that, I think that is elevating the level of positive cases. There are existing testing facilities right now in Nubian Square, which are free, run by the city in collaboration with local health centers. You can also get tested, by the way, this week, starting on Friday, for free at the CVS on Gallivan Boulevard in Dorchester. So that's all part of the strategy the city is employing to try to get a handle on what is, very much of a concerning trend here in Dorchester right now.
I know even a couple of weeks ago, the mayor and the governor were talking about young people having too many parties with too many people, not enough masks, not enough distancing. But couldn't this also be people going to work, riding the T? I mean, the T, even I notice, it seems to be more crowded these days.
Well, it could be, Chris. Hopefully people are wearing those masks on the T. I would imagine they are. But it's also, I mean, we've been back in school now for a few weeks. I should mention that at the local level, of course, BPS is very much impacted by this. The mayor has really put a pause on what they had hoped to do, was to start rotating more and more kids into BPS classrooms. That's going to be on pause now until further notice. There are kids who are at the highest need rate who are in the schools at a smaller population. But it's important to note, locally here in Dorchester, just in the last week, St. John Paul Catholic Academy decided which was going fully on campus for those who wanted to be in a classroom, have now reverted entirely to at-home learning, distance learning. BC High this week here in Dorchester paused its current group of kids who were on campus learning and their home learning remotely the next 2 days at minimum. It's a fluid situation, but clearly one of the big concerns right now is protecting students and teachers. And we're hearing from a lot of different corners of the neighborhood concern about teachers in particular and students being put in that position.
I want to ask you about another kind of contagion, as I call it. There's a proposal for a pot shop in Adams Village, where I think we're close to where the Supreme supermarket used to be way back in the day. And some people in the neighborhood are very worried about this. What's special about this particular pot shop?
It's interesting, Chris. This is a recreational cannabis proposal that has just surfaced publicly in the last couple of months and has had two hearings locally with local civic associations. The proposal would put it into a commercial building in Adams Corner where people may know there's a Supreme Liquors, which is now where the Supreme Market used to be back in our day, Chris. There's a Boston Sports Club. There's College Hype, which is a clothing retailer, a couple of other small businesses. So this cannabis proposal would go into the basement of that building. It would be about 3,000 square feet. And it's a pretty standard proposal for what we're seeing from cannabis businesses across the city. Two local civic associations have given them a hearing so far, or had them present to their group. One was done about 3 weeks ago to the Cedar Grove Civic Association. It was done in a virtual way. And by and large, from our coverage, it was fairly well received. There were people who did raise concerns about things like parking and security, and about mitigation for funding of local community groups, sports groups in particular. But overall, pretty well received. The next hearing was with the Ashmont Adams Neighborhood Association about 2 weeks ago now, and they really had a different take. Many of the people who got up to speak, and by the way, this was an in-person civic group meeting. It was held outdoors, safe distance and everything. But an interesting dynamic there, because this one was very different. People, by and large, got up and rejected the idea of having a cannabis use in Adams Corner, really on the grounds of, from their perspective, it not belonging in their part of the city, feeling as though it was not in concert with the kind of uses they have there. And frankly, a big dose of NIMBYism voiced, like our neighborhood is special and we don't want this kind of use. They see it as a sinister use, actually, or a dangerous one for youth, etc. So they were really relitigating the ballot question that decided the legality of cannabis and marijuana in the Commonwealth. That's really, not at this stage of the game up for discussion. These are legal businesses that, have a right to open through the right regulatory process. So two very different takes. It will, of course, be, ultimately decided at a different level with city authorities and the Cannabis Control Commission weighing in. But we're watching the story, Chris. There's a lot of passions about it. We have two letters to the editor this week that really are pushing back on my editorial from last week, which was challenging that sort of NIMBYism that I see in some of the voices that are against this.
You've also been covering the church closings, and there are quite a few that have taken place in recent years in Dorchester. The most recent is St. Matthew's Church, which is in the part just a few blocks from Morton Street, if I recall. What were the concerns around that?
Well, St. Matthew's is a predominantly Haitian American congregation in recent decades, Chris. It's on Stanton Street in Dorchester, not too far from like Dorchester High or Tech Boston Academy, if people know where that is. It's kind of tucked into a very residential community. St. Matthew's has been struggling like all the parishes in the city financially for many years. However, has been home to, like I said, a very kind of impassioned and very devoted Haitian congregation. In the last year, in fact, just in the last number of months, the parish was merged officially with its really longtime sister parish, St. Angela in Mattapan on Blue Hill Ave. They went through a merger process over the summer. They came up with a new name of that joint parish, which was named Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And that was basically where we stood as of the beginning of the fall, I should say the end of the summer. Much like the process that went ahead in Neponset, where St. Brendan and St. Anne have now become a new parish called St. Martin de Porres. And the argument all along was it's going to help these church buildings survive to join their finances as joint parishes. Well, that's why the closure of St. Matthew's is taken many people by surprise, because St. Matthew's is now closed. The church building closed abruptly at the end of September with very little notice to the community. There were some communication within the parish to existing parishioners, but the larger St. Matthew's community, including people who, haven't really been going there for many years, but had important parts of their life take place there, were frankly upset by it. They would have liked the opportunity to know it was going to close, maybe attend a final mass. We're still hearing from parishioners this week about their feeling was that it was insensitively done and disrespectfully done to especially the Haitian community that has been using it. So it's fraught with emotion, of course, like many times these are, but I think, they may need to take a step back and think about giving people an opportunity to see their worship space one more time.
The last time I was there was 36 years ago to do a story about a food pantry. What's going to become of that?
Well, the food pantry, which has been housed in St. Matthew's Church for many, many years, has just relocated across the street. They weren't sure what they were going to do, frankly. They did work out something with a child care center that happens to be located in what used to be St. Matthew Grammar School. It's no longer owned, or I should say, occupied by the parish. But the food pantry did reopen last Friday, and they're going to continue to serve a high-need constituency in that part of Dorchester, which is a good thing.
And turning to another topic here, some advisories from motorists. I don't see a drop of rain outside right now, but there's plenty of water on Morrissey Boulevard. Explain what's happening here.
Yeah, it's coming apparently this weekend, the moisture, Chris. And even if it doesn't rain, the high tides are coming. And that's what really is an issue for Morrissey Boulevard, every couple of months, really, when there are major high tide events. There's one starting today. And the DCR, the state-owned agency that kind of oversees the boulevard, has put out the warning. There's signs up on the boulevard now, warning of wicked high tides. It's going to be a problem. And the only upside I can say about it is UMass Boston is not holding classes in person. As I mentioned, BC High, at least for now, is not on campus. So the traffic volume is lower, but the high tides are going to cause lane closures and flooding. And it speaks to the larger long-term issue here with Morrissey, which is that, it's right at sea level, if not below sea level at this point. And these sort of tide events are going to swamp that road system. There is a state-run agency, the DCR, that is planning a longer-term rebuild that would elevate the roadway. But Chris, it's many years away at minimum. The planning process has really stalled out on that, and there is no funding yet to do it. So we're stuck with the situation for a while, and every few weeks or a number of weeks there's going to be these kind of events.
Briefly, the shutdown of the Granite Avenue Bridge.
Granite Avenue drawbridge is going to shut down on the 23rd for basically the weekend for emergency steel beam repair, and that's going to cause disruption around that part of Dorchester. The expressway off-ramps and on-ramps will be shut down. So that's going to be coming up next weekend, not this weekend, but the following weekend. So plan accordingly on that.
All right, and sure, if people need some more updates, you've got this online or on Twitter, people can check it out?
Yes, you can go online to .news.com. You can also pick up the print version, which is conveniently located at your local store, and you can follow us on Twitter at .news.
Thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Thanks, Chris. Good luck.
Bill Forry from the Dorchester Reporter. We'll have more news in just a moment.